And welcome back to Love Your Food. This week we have this really interesting pork and shrimp sort of meatball farce that we're going to do in 3 different kinds of twice-fried dim sum dumplings. Now before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone that we have an affiliate link with Chef's Temp. If you need a kitchen thermometer or meat probe, please check out the link in the description below and use code LOVEYOURFOOD on checkout for 15% off your order. In the meantime, here's our ingredients. So we've got some ground pork, some shrimp, some firm tofu, some lotus root, and we got ours frozen, some eggplant, some flour for the batter, some sesame oil, some salt, some soy sauce, some psyllium husks, garlic, ginger, and some white pepper. We're also going to use some Shaoxing wine in here as well. Now, first thing we're going to do is, because it needs a little bit of prep, we're going to do our eggplant first. So these are these nice sort of slim Asian eggplants. And we're just going to cut these. You can see here, we're sort of cutting a little mouth for them and then cutting them on a bias. We're going to salt these and let them sit for a little while. It allows some of the liquid to come out of them and it reduces the bitterness if there's bitterness in your eggplant. It makes them quite sweet if you let them sit for a while, but that takes some time. So we're going to put those on a rack and let them sort of sit and the liquid to come out and drain, and then we're going to deal with those later. In the meantime, we're going to do some of our other ingredients here. Now, because we're making quite a fine paste out of our shrimp and pork, what they would call a farce, we want all of our ingredients to be quite fine. So we're going to go with what would probably be considered a brunoise for this. Really, really fine dice for all of our veggies here. So this is the green onion. And we're using both the green and the white portions. And the same with our ginger. We're going to get this as fine as we possibly can. So again, into that sort of brunoise neighborhood. Now, in addition, for the ginger and also for the garlic, you're going to see in a moment, we're just going to give that a little bit of a scrape with the blade of the knife. You've seen us do this before. This is to just make it more of a paste, and it's going to mix in a little bit easier with all of our other ingredients in the farce. Just makes for a really nice, smooth experience when you're eating it. And again, you can see here, we're going to do that with the garlic a little bit as well. And once that's all nice and fine, that's just going to go straight in with our ground pork. Now, this is a sort of an Asian style meatball, so we are going to mix this quite a bit, and it's going to get quite firm and a little bit springy. Next thing we're going to do is chop up our shrimp. Now, of course, you want to get all the skins off of these, so you're going to deshell them and devein them. You want to make sure there's no veins with sand in them at all and no bits of shell. And we're going to mince those pretty finely. Again, you want to get those pretty close to a paste. And we're going to mix that in with our pork and the vegetables we put in there. Now, we have some psyllium husks here. This is typically done with cornstarch. But we wanted to do this with psyllium husks just for the little extra fiber, and it has a very similar effect in sort of binding everything together. In goes the soy sauce. In goes the sesame oil. And then we're also going to add in just a little bit of the Shaoxing wine. That's going to add a really interesting flavor to this. It's really delightful. In goes our salt, and that's going to sort of just wake up all those flavors in there. And then we want to mix this all together, of course, until it looks a bit like this. At this point, we're going to add in our white pepper, which has a really interesting, different flavor from black pepper. It's a little bit, it's got this really kind of interesting musky flavor to it. It's a little less sharp, and we're just going to mix that all together. And like I said earlier, we do want this to come together and be quite tight. Like we want it to be a little bit springy and bouncy. So we're going to mix this together and almost overwork it until it's got a texture that's a little closer to what we'd expect from an Asian meatball or something like that. And that's as opposed to like an Italian meatball. And we're just going to set that aside in the fridge and let it all come together. And it will tighten up a little bit more as it sits. Next, we're going to get our tofu ready. So this is firm tofu. We're just going to pat it all dry. Now, this is all going into the fryer, so we do want to make sure that the outside is nice and dry. You don't want a whole lot of spatter. We're going to cut this into triangles. And there we go. So we're just going to get these into these interesting triangle shapes, sort of wedges. And again, you want to just tap the insides dry as well, because they do get they are a little bit moist. And then we're going to hollow out a little corner on one of them. Make sure you don't break through to the other side. You want to go just deep enough that you're going to leave a hole in there for the meatball, but not go poke your spoon out the other side. And we're going to put all of the stuff from the inside of the tofu into our mixture. You can see here it's actually quite cold now. It's been sitting in the fridge for a little while. It's come together, and it's nice and firm now. It's got that springy texture to it. And we're just going to mix in those bits of tofu in there, add a little bit of bulk. And then we're just going to roll these into little meatballs that we're going to place. And again, you want to be delicate about it because tofu will fall apart. We're sort of delicately going to stuff that into these hollowed out pieces of tofu. In addition, we're going to do this again with our lotus roots. And you want to kind of get pieces of lotus root if you've got a bunch. You want to get some that are roughly the same size. So you want to make sure that if you've got two, that they are about the same size. Otherwise, it doesn't really hold together very well. And you want to just give it a good squeeze to make sure it sticks together. And then you want to pat dry again. We're patting all of these dry because they're going into the fryer. You're going to pat dry your eggplant, and we're just going to stuff a little bit of that farce inside the eggplants. Now, all of these are going to get a batter, and they are going to get fried once in shallow oil, and then they're going to get fried a second time at a much higher temperature in a deep fryer or a Dutch oven. So here we are just putting the batter together. It's a very simple sort of tempura-style batter. It's just very, very cold water and flour. And we're just going to get a little light coating on everything. And we learned a lot when we were doing this. This whole thing was kind of an experiment for us. And we learned a lot. One thing we learned was that we should have really boiled the tofu before we did all of this. We learned a lot about the whole process. But for these, all of these came out really, really well. So the first thing we're going to do is give these a light fry at a low temperature in the batter so they get just lightly browned. And you want to make sure that that farce, the filling, the pork and shrimp, is cooked all the way through. And you'll know they're ready on one side when they sort of start to release from the bottom of the pan. Once they start to release from the bottom of the pan, that means they're pretty much done. And once they're nicely cooked on both sides, you can take those out, and we're just going to let those cool for a little while. And we're going to do the same thing. This is the tofu stuffed with the meatball as well. And these all have the same filling. They all came out really quite different from one another in the end result. And again, we're just going to make sure that these get a nice sort of cook on the outside. Again, they're going to go into the deep fryer a second time later to get nice and crispy on the outside. So don't worry if they look a little pale here, or if you feel like they've lost some of their coating. That's okay. They're going to hit a really hot fry oil right now. So this is at a much higher temperature than we normally deep fry things. We're not doing them for very long, and when they come out, we want them to be really nice and crispy on the outside. And all three of these came out very different. The eggplant came out incredibly sweet. It was unbelievable, actually. They were like candy. And so in goes our tofu as well with the farce as well, and that's going to hit that really hot oil as well. And this is what they end up looking like. They're beautiful, crispy on the outside. We use some of our spicy pineapple sauce with this, and they came out so excellent. They were really delicious. That farce was cooked all the way through. The outsides were gorgeous and crispy, and all of the other ingredients, the eggplant in particular was super fluffy. That tofu was crispy on the outside and like a cloud all the way through. Really, really interesting. We hope you'll give this a try. It really was very, very delicious. If you like this recipe, please do like and subscribe. And if you have any recipes you'd like to see Chef Caleb try on the channel, please let us know in the comments below. We'd like to thank our patrons over on Patreon. If you'd like to support us there, you can find the link for that in the description below. And remember to love your food.